Welcome one and all to yet another red hot, sizzling, juicy, spicy, tender Kings of War battle report. This time it's the Abyssal Dwarfs versus their slightly less evil cousins, the regular vanilla dwarves. Very little flavour going on in that particular dwarven faction. So to guide you through this battle report, we have two tools at our disposal. First of all, we have the magic yellow arrow that will guide your eyeballs towards relevant portions of the screen. And that's if you can ever peel your eyes off the top right hand corner where this lovely visage is about to appear. Hello there. So here we go. It's another battle report with the Abyssal Dwarves, and let's dive headfirst into this juicy goodness, shall we? So this is the Plunder scenario. So there are 5 objectives across the centre of the battlefield, and you can see the forces lined up here. There are they're supposedly good, but the maybe slightly sinister dwarves, I would say, and then the wholesome, full of purity and light abyssal dwarves down here. And quite spread out, because this scenario, each of these objectives is initially worth 1 victory point, but then after choosing sides, each player nominates one of those objectives to be worth double. So we'll go over the placement of those in a moment, and the army lists. So here we go, it's 2,000 points if I didn't mention that already. So on the dwarf side we have, this is on the right flank as I look at it, from the Abyssal Dwarf side. So we have Regiment of Brock Riders, Troop of Brock Riders, and a Brock Lord. Now there are 2 Brock Rider regiments in this army. One of them has the Brew of Strength, one of them has the Brew of Sharpness. I can't remember which one's which, but it doesn't really matter. It's pretty much the same kind of thing anyway, in terms of how many wounds they should be dishing out. And in the middle, there are the organ guns. Here, there's 2. There's another one right on the other side as well, but we'll get to that shortly. There's Golluck's Fury, and there are lots of Ironclad. So a horde and 2 regiments of Ironclad. There's the Defense 5 dwarf troops, pretty standard troopers, no crushing strength to be seen in them. Then over on this flank, we have the other Brock Rider regiment, another Brock Lord, Mastiff hunting unit, and the other organ gun. So 3 organ guns, and my thinking with the placement of the tokens, because this is on the left as I look forward. So my opponent won the roll-off to place the first of the more valuable tokens. So I had to decide, did I want to put the two-point objectives right next to each other or spread them out? And you would think with the fact my army is quite slow, and it kind of needs to be bunched together. I need to have all my golems, for example, near the Ironcasters. So they all have potential to be surged, for instance. And maybe I'd want to bunch them up. But on the other hand, I'm facing 3 organ guns. And the last thing you want is just 3 organ guns pointing at the one area of the battlefield you need to be in. Anyone who's ever faced Rordia or Dwarves with their volley guns and organ guns in a dominate scenario knows how terrible that is. So I've chosen to spread them out. And these are the first 2 tokens. The green ones are worth 1. The fancy grey painted ones are worth 2. And this is the middle objective right here. And then we get over to the right-hand side, and there's another one that's worth 1 point. And then I chose for this one to be worth 2, right out on the flank. Now the thinking there is that I think that my opponent will want to take this objective. However, there's this big forest there as well. So anyone that actually gets that objective might struggle to get back across the battlefield and get involved in the rest of the game. So I'm thinking if I can try and entice quite a few units over there and not commit too much there myself, then I will steamroll on the left-hand side, and then that should be good enough. So it's kind of bait. However, I've still got some juicy stuff down here. I've got a regiment of half-breeds. I've got a regiment of Immortal Guard. I've got a troop of gargoyles, and I've got Brekkie with his amazing 12-inch inspiring range. Now, after I put him down here, I was starting to think maybe he would have been better served elsewhere. I think I maybe have put too much over here for the task that I had in mind for this force. In the middle, we've got Basuzan behind this piece of terrain here. No real thought behind her being behind terrain. There's nothing that's really going to shoot her in the first turn. And this is planning for me to go first, by the way. The reason she's there specifically is because I want her to fly up into a position that's incredibly dangerous in turn 1, and then be able to threaten the middle and both flanks from that spot, and that's pretty much right in the centre. So that's why she's positioned there. We've got the mortar back here, which has a nice view up both these directions here into both sides of the enemy force, and some more Immortal Guard there. These ones are aiming directly at one of the 1-point objectives, which is going to be their goal for the game. Over on this flank, we've got all the golems, we've got Dravek down here, and we've got the 2 Dragonfire teams. I wasn't thinking necessarily to deploy all this as far left as I have done, but my opponent started putting some quite hard-hitting units down here. So I decided, you know what, I need to put all this meat right here, completely steamroll this flank. If anything gets through, I've got the backup from the Dragonfire teams, and I've got Basusu, who is within striking distance to help this flank as well. But I think I should be able to win on this flank, pick up the tokens, then steamroll in the other way. So, moving on. Now, into turn 1. The dwarves win the roll-off, and they elect to go first. So, the first point of business for them is moving up and not allowing themselves to be charged by any of my units. You will have noticed that the half-breeds and the Brock Riders that were opposite each other were both behind walls before the game. So whoever went first was going to be able to jump over the wall without being in charge range of the other, which is quite important, because if I also want to get off the wall, so I'm not making hindered charges, that means my opponent will be able to charge me unhindered as well. So for armies like this, it's interesting to decide whether you should go first or second in this kind of scenario, because typically you would want to get forward faster to get onto these objectives and pick them up, because the armies are quite slow. But in the case of the dwarves, then they have a couple of other things to consider as well, because all their shooting is 24 inches of range. So if they go first, they're either going to have to move them or stand still and not shoot. And we're not going to be able to shoot regardless. But you're potentially losing a turn of shooting with the organ guns by going first. However, you're also denying the mortar turn of shooting, and I've got flyers, so you're denying them that opportunity to get the first move in and fly into a really perilous position for the rest of your army. So it's 50-50, I think, whether going first or second is good for the dwarves here. Had I got first turn, with the Abyssal Dwarfs, going first definitely would have been a good thing, I think. So probably the dwarves have made the right decision in going first, I would say. Probably just leaning in that direction. So you can see how they're facing off against my battle line here. The gargoyles are out of range of everything they can see at the moment. So they've positioned themselves so that I can't charge them. So all I'd be able to do is just move out and invite them to charge me and try and prevent some kind of bait. And over here in the middle, you can see everything's moving up. Golluck's Fury moving up behind them, but he's not going to get in range to shoot yet because he's behind their lines. And over on this flank, the Brocks are shielded by the Mastiffs, which is a reasonable role for them. And that's how it looks with the battle line there. So I need to make some lava hills because it does look a bit silly, doesn't it? And there is the full battlefield, and I will just move myself out of the way so you can see it at the top as well there. So quite spread out, more spread out than either of us would probably like, ideally. We don't have that many units each that can actually hold the objectives, compared to some of the armies that I've run, in particular my goblins, where I've got a lot of units that can pick things up. And I've often faced ogre armies quite a bit recently. So I'm used to facing armies that can hold a lot of objectives as well. So with these, I think I've only got 7, and my opponent maybe has 8 things that can hold objectives. And there are 5 objectives on offer, all spread out. So once we start losing units, it might be tricky. Turn 1 for the Abyssal Dwarves. And so I've decided I don't want the half-breeds to get charged. And even though they're going to be on the wall, so anytime they charge someone now, they'll be hindered, I think that's worth it because I don't want them taking a front charge. They are more vulnerable, in fact, than the Immortal Guard. They've got lower nerve and lower defense than Immortal Guard. So they're really all about their speed and their hitting power on the charge. So I've put the Immortal Guard in charge range because they're inspired and my opponent will have to commit. I would think that 1 regiment of Brocks would have to be on slightly the side of luck to kill them in 1 round. They're defense 5, and unfortunately though, the way I've pivoted them, if I pivoted them slightly differently, then I could have guaranteed that any kind of double charge would have had something being hindered in these woods here. And you'll see how it goes in the next turn, that maybe if I'd moved them a little bit, it turned out different here. But That's where they are, and then I've got the gargoyles and the half-breeds threatening anyone that charges them and doesn't kill them, and if they want to commit everything in there, they may have trouble with their pivoting afterwards to avoid the various flanks and rear charges that might be on offer here. So there's how that looks, and this unit of Mortal Guard is moving towards that objective. That's their goal in this game, to just pick that up and then turn whichever way I think they're going to be most needed. Most likely that way, because I don't want to contest this. I want to just ignore this objective pretty much once the fight's over. In the middle, Susan does what she would have done in turn 1 had I got turn 1, and just bounces straight up there onto the hill so she can threaten everything over there and over here. If the Brock Lord on the right doesn't move, then he can get charged, and this organ gun is the obvious juicy target. Suso is quite expensive to be chasing organ guns around all game, but they are very dangerous, so it may be worth it to do so. You can see these golems have moved up, and to my eye, to the naked eye, I just assumed that everything over there was going to be in the front of these golems, and I was actually incorrect in that assessment. But luckily, it's not going to matter. So, always check. Even if you think you know that something's going to be in the front, it doesn't hurt just to get the template out and just check, because it turns out that this is actually slightly allowing the Brocks into the flank. Thankfully, because of the positioning of these other units around here, the distance they would have to move out the way makes it impossible for the Brocks to actually contact the flank with a single pivot. So they can only contact the front, so they won't be able to get in there. So that's fortunate, but it just shows you should always check your facings with regard to the enemy. And Dravak has surged one of my units forward, so I decided to surge the golems up and not Infernock. And when you're surging anyone, you have to be careful that you're not going to be surged into a position where you can be flank charged, of course. So these golems, it looked like a pretty safe bet that nothing would be able to reach them or flank them. So he surges them up 7 inches, almost enough to reach the Mastiffs actually, but they just stop short, and this unit's going to get charged. But I don't know if I mentioned earlier, the artifact I've taken in this army, this horde has the phalanx with the Amulet of Thorns. So the Brock Riders charging in there will be at a bit of a disadvantage with regards to doing damage. The Mortar, what does it do this turn? Well, it hits, and it does 6 wounds to Golluck's Fury, which is a start. It might take another hit to hit it anywhere near peril, though. And there's how the battlefield looks now. I'm fairly satisfied at the moment. I think my plan, pretty much, this unit is going to pick up this token and then head towards this one, probably. Over here, we're just going to make this fight last a little while and then try and keep those units out the game, because I'm very confident that all my golems and my Dragonfire teams will be able to take on what's over here, provided Basusu and the Mortar can mop up various other units. Turn 2 for the Dwarves, and it's a very strange little setup we end up with here. So the Brock Regiment don't want to charge in here, the Brock Lord doesn't want to charge in here, they just want to kind of block any potential flank charge from the half-breeds into the regiment of Brock Riders should they bounce off an inch. So that would actually succeed in preventing the flank charge, that unit being there. So playing it safe a little bit there, doesn't want to get flanked. And the Brock Lord is in a weird position though, because there's lots of height 2 units around here, and he won't be able to see over them next turn to charge anyone unless I kill something to take it out of the way. And the Mastiffs, they are actually in the front of the Lesser Obsidian Golems on the hill, so they decide to charge in there. And the Brocks and the Brock Lord charge into the Phalanx Golems over here. And the other hordes just move up into a threatening position, and this one picks up the 2-point objective in the centre there. You can see it resting on their base. And there's how that side looks. So, one issue that I immediately spotted over on this side here is that the Brock Lord, after combat, they're unlikely to kill this phalanx horde of golems without their thunderous charge. So, if they both bounce off an inch, then Infernock and the golems would be able to declare a double charge into the Brock Lord, which would then allow these guys to overrun, should he die, into the Brock Riders next turn. So that's the first thing I spotted when that double charge was declared. And did I learn from that though? Because I'm going to start doing some multi-charges with individuals in a minute, and we'll see if I make similar, possibly mistakes. Might be harsh to call some of them mistakes because individuals like that with a lot of attacks are useful for turning the tide of a combat, but you do leave yourself open to the overrun at times. So let's see what damage gets dished out. The organ gun and Golluck's organ gun put 3 damage onto Infernock, which he's not too worried about because hopefully he can get that healed back if Dravak can do a fireball next turn. The other organ gun ignores Basusu and just targets these Immortal Guard, puts 2 damage on them. And the other Immortal Guard unit gets totally wiped out by the Brock Riders. And I was thinking they may have a chance of surviving that, but look at that. 14 damage, no chance, even with being inspired. And then they pivot, and then we check to make sure that the gargoyles charging them in the flank would be hindered, because at the moment they wouldn't be. So my opponent just corrects that a little bit, just to make sure that the gargoyles would be hindered if they want to charge in the flank there. The only way to avoid that, potentially, would be to use Brecky and just park him here somewhere so that they could charge in without worrying about that. But it's a complicated situation over here now, because I've got options. The half-breeds could charge into this troop. I could charge Brecky into the front and the gargoyles into the flank, but that's probably not going to kill me any units. Hindered half-breeds probably are not going to kill a troop of Brock Riders because they can't be wavered, they have high nerve, and they're inspired. So I was not confident in that at all. So what I'm going to do eventually is charge the gargoyles into the flank, charge the half-breeds into the front of this unit, after Brecky goes into this unit here, into the troop, which may not turn out to be the best choice, but I was thinking that would give me a fairly decent likelihood of killing this unit in one round. Because I don't want to leave Brock Riders alive, because they have so many attacks, they could kill any of these units quite handily. So over on this side, these Brocks don't have anywhere near as much success as the others. They only do 2 damage, and they'll be very disappointed with that, but they were wounding on 6s, so presumably this is the unit with +1 to hit the Brew of Sharpness. So, unit down, but it's time to strike back. Turn 2. And over on this side, so this actually turns out to be a mistake here, because I kind of miscalculated the distances between the units and the angles involved here. Because the fact that they were perfectly lined up like this means that Brecky charging into the flank of that unit, it means that both these units can charge him, this one with a counter charge, and then they would both be able to overrun because these units are perfectly aligned. So that was a miscalculation on my part there, so that's not going to end well. The gargoyles in the flank and the half-breeds in the front. 14 damage, but not quite enough to kill them. But you can see that that almost paid off there. A tiny bit more damage, and if I'd killed them, that would have actually turned this flank probably in my favour. The Immortal Guard in the middle pick up the token and head over towards this direction, because there's only a 2-pointer over there. If I ignore that and hold all the rest, then I'll win. The Susan decides to kill an organ gun, and then just face the rest of the battle. Dragonfire teams get into range to shoot, but out of the charge range of this horde and do 4 damage, which is a little bit low. Dravak moves onto the hill, but he's slid down a bit by now. He's actually about here. And he fireballs this unit and puts some wounds back onto Infernock. So you can see he's back to 1 now. And what I was telling you about before with the overrun into the Brock Lord, Infernock and the Obsidian Golems have a go at that. They overrun the Brock Lord, and then the Golems overrun into the Brock Rider unit, and Infernock bounces back D3 just to make sure no one's going to be able to flank him. And 9 damage onto these Brocks. They're not dead yet, but we should be able to take them out soon. And it's looking alright at this stage. You can see these Golems killed off the Mastiffs that were in front of them quite easily, but they are in charge range of some units here now. Whether they want to charge, we'll see, but they may well go for it. So who's holding tokens? Infernock hasn't picked up the token here at this stage. I'm thinking there's no point right now, because I may want to be surging him soon. I don't want to have to drop the token. So I'm just going to leave it there. It's in quite a good position. And either of these units will be able to pick it up next time they fight. And here, on this side, it's not looking as healthy because, like I said, I've opened up this double charge into Brecky with a potential double successful overrun. into the half-breeds. That's going to end really badly, and that's something to consider there. It's just a slight miscalculation which could have dire consequences for this flank, but this flank was designed mainly to hold up the enemy. However, it could have held them up for longer had Bracky just not bothered to charge into combat, because this unit of half-breeds is just as likely to die now with his presence there, but he will also die, whereas he could have been around to finish something off next turn, potentially. So it could be killing 2 of our own birds for the price of 1. Okay, we're on to the dwarf turn now. And they've moved up, but they haven't charged into the golems on the hill because they want to shoot that unit. And there's that double charge I was talking about, so it aligns perfectly for the double overrun. Wow, wow, wow. And the organ gun and Golluck's organ gun and this organ gun all target the golems on the hill. 10 damage, but thankfully they're inspired, so they manage to hang around. The Brocks here have the round of fighting of their lives and get these golems up to 10 as well, but thankfully they can't remove them, which is a bit fortunate. And over here, Bracky is taken out quite handily, and then the half-breeds are going to get munched as well, so very bad news. They're all dead. And then there's going to be some pivoting going on, and that's how they turn themselves. So the gargoyles will hope to finish off this unit. Even while hindered next turn, they only need a tiny bit more damage and that unit should die. And that's going to be okay because I'll kill them, then the gargoyles will get killed. My opponent will ultimately pick up this token, but it'll take so long that they won't be able to get involved in the rest of the game, hopefully, before the end. And you can see that I'm going to be able to charge with the golems into one of these, probably this unit, because more likely to kill them, and then I can concentrate all my shooting on this horde. Also, Infernock can join in with this charge here. Turn 3 for the Abyssal Dwarfs. The Gargoyles, they go in, they get the Brock Riders up to 17 damage, but then double 1. Wow, wow, wow. So those Swords of Summer nerve dice haven't let me down that many times, but they've started to have a few double 1s creeping in now. The Mortar, what does it do this turn? It hits Golluck's Fury for the second time. Let's move to 13 damage and a Waver. And you can see that Basuzan is right here. That's because she decided to fly in and kill another organ gun this turn. And Dravek and the Dragonfire teams, with their combined might, they put the Horde up to 10 wounds. They're carrying a very valuable token, so if I can kill them by the end of the game, that's going to be very nice. And the Golems charge into this unit here. Even though they didn't kill them, I'm not too concerned about exposing the flank, and I didn't try to heal them, because even if I did, I'd probably only heal them maybe 3 wounds, and that probably wouldn't save them from being charged in the front and in the flank by these 2 units. So Infernock and the Golems here kill off the Brock Riders, so they turn this way. There is an organ gun up there, but I'm going to totally ignore it because it's going to have a round to shoot me anyway. So if it kills the unit, it doesn't matter which way they were facing, and if it doesn't kill them, I can keep sending them this way and maybe even get involved in another part of the game. You can see that the Infernock here has picked up the 1-point objective from the ground there. And there's Basusu looking victorious after killing that organ gun. So my plan is kind of coming together now. I've got all these enemy units heavily damaged, so I should be able to kill them all with my breath weapons. And Infernock, who's not wounded, is going to be able to sweep in and hopefully kill everything here. And pick up tokens as he goes, because that unit is carrying a 2-pointer. This unit here of dwarves that you can't quite see because I'm in the way, I've moved my Immortal Guard into a face-off with them, because I want them to charge me, because the Ironclad are not as good at fighting as the Immortal Guard. They can be wavered for a start, and they don't have Vicious. So the Immortal Guard should win that duel, and we're both carrying 1-point objectives. So I'm happy to initiate that fight and take the first hit, even though I'm already on 2 damage. I'm still confident there. And moving on. Turn 4 for the dwarves. So the Ironclad, they have to go in there, really. They have to try, but I'm still confident. And over here, the Brock Riders are going to obviously eat the Gargoyles, who failed to eat them last turn. And this Brock Lord can actually get involved in the game now because of that double 1. Had I not rolled the double 1 with the Gargoyles, then the Brock Lord probably would have had to kill them, which would mean that he's not as far advanced on the battlefield, because these Brocks have gone to pick up the 2-point objective, which they need to do. In the middle, of course, we've got the double charge into these golems who are going to die, but they were going to die regardless. They're already so damaged. The organ gun over on the left takes out the other golems, just finishes them off with a couple of wounds, but Infernock is still full health, so he's quite happy. The other unit of golems die as well as a result of that combat, but both these units are so damaged I'll hope to kill them. And so on this side of the table, I think I'm going to be able to kill all of these units next turn, because I've got Basusu here who can finish off Golluck's Fury, I've got Infernock who can finish off this unit, and I've got all my shooting attacks to target on this horde. So I'm quite confident I can completely clear this flank and leave only an organ gun. And one organ gun isn't going to finish off the -20 Infernock on its own. And look at this though, so the Ironclad actually do way more damage than I was anticipating here. They do 6 by the looks of it, and they get the Immortal Guard up to 8, which is not looking too healthy at the moment, because I may need 2 rounds to kill them. So with the Brocklord coming in, they may actually win this fight, so I may have to kill this unit as well with something else. Okay, so the Brocks kill the Gargoyles, obviously, and turn themselves to face that way. And there's how the middle of the battlefield is looking. So I don't have many units left, and next turn, these guys might die, so I may only have Infernock left to score with, but he is in range to pick up some very valuable objectives. So the 2-pointer here, which he is in position to get, I can kill all this stuff next turn quite easily. This unit will probably survive, but these 3 should be dead next turn. Turn 4 for the Abyssal Dwarfs. So Basusun manages to kill off Golluck's Fury. Infernock manages to kill off the regiment of Ironclad. Dravik and the Dragonfire teams do some more damage to this horde, but can't quite kill it yet, which is unfortunate. And the Immortal Guard do 5 damage to the Ironclad, which is not as well as the Ironclad did against them. And over here, nothing's going on. And there's how that looks. So the plan is still coming together. I've killed off those units. This horde is almost dead. Infernock will be able to kill them and take the 2-point objective off them, barring a miracle. And that just means that I'll have to kill this unit somehow. I've got Susan there. So I've got units that can potentially chase them down and kill them before the end of the game. And if they drop the tokens, the dwarves aren't going to be able to pick them up again, because their units are too far over there. And they've only got a 2-point objective on that side. So if Infernock can hold a 1-point and a 2-pointer, I'll be able to win. So I'm kind of confident, but one bad roll and everything could swing horribly. Turn 5 for the dwarves, and my opponent has actually timed out right here, but it's only a practice game, so we just carry on. The chess lock is more just of a guide to make sure we're playing fast enough, so somebody needs to speed up. So these dwarves have just moved back towards the action a little bit, but they're too far away to really affect much. And these guys are just hiding with the 2-point objective, quite wisely. The Brocklord goes into the rear of the Immortal Guard, the Ironclad in the front, so they should die now. The horde of Ironclad into Infernock. He doesn't care though, because they don't have any crushing strength, so they're unlikely to do much to him, and he's unwounded. The Immortal Guard die, and this unit steals their token, so my opponent now has 4 victory points, and I only have... In fact, my opponent has this one as well still. So 6 victory points, and I just have 1. But I am going to kill this unit shortly. And over here, you can see how they position themselves afterwards. So these guys are turning around because they want to run away with those tokens and not fight Infernock. Infernock takes 3 wounds, which is nowhere near enough to worry him. And there's how the battlefield is looking. So at the moment, I've got a choice. Does Basusu charge into the rear of this unit and start trying to kill them now? Because I need them dead. I need them to drop both those tokens. And I'd rather they didn't drop them further this way. And Infernock should be able to finish them off because they're on 16 wounds. But playing it safe, I decide I'm going to charge Susan into the flank of this unit and Infernock into the front. Because I think Basusu will only need 1 round to finish them off, because I'm going to shoot them as well with the Dragonfire teams. So I think she can kill them in 1 round. So she's going to help kill here, and there's no way they can advance far enough to escape from her winged range. Turn 5 for the Abyssal Dwarves. So that combat is a success. Infernock steals the token from the horde of Ironclad that he was fighting in conjunction with Queen of the Gargoyles, Basusun, and Infernock is now carrying lots of valuable tokens. Dravak has just moved up into range to potentially threaten next turn, but he couldn't get in range to shoot the Ironclad. However, 2 Dragonfire teams could. Dravak just had to move, and he moved at the double because he wasn't in range to shoot. So both the Dragonfire teams get this unit up to 7 wounds, which puts them in prime Basusu finishing off territory. So the plan is kind of coming together. And on this side, I'm not really concerned about these 2 units because they're not going to affect the outcome of the game as it stands. If the Brock Riders start heading this way towards the unit with the tokens and there's a turn 7, there's potential that the Brocks could possibly pick them up. But if they come this way, they're almost certainly going to die because I've got ranged units over there and I will be going last. So I'll have the opportunity to kill them because look how much damage they're on. So I can understand that they'll be hesitant to do that. So not many units left on either side, and really what the game's going to come down to, can the Organ Gun get really lucky and kill Infernock, or can Basusu kill off this unit in one go, who are already wounded? She should be able to with her 8 attacks. Turn 6 for the Dwarves, so this unit of Brocks just move up to the mortar in case there's a turn 7, they can kill it, and they're close enough so they're not threatened by it. And the Ironclad have just continued running away, but they can't run away from Basusan. And the Brock Lord goes after one of the Dragonfire teams, and he's going to kill that quite easily. The Organ Gun puts some more damage onto Infernock, but he's not concerned. 6 wounds, dash 20, so it's absolutely fine. The Dragonfire team does go down. And there's how it's looking at the end of that turn. So there's nothing up there behind my glorious face. And what I'm going to do next turn is, I've got Basusu over here somewhere. She's going to charge into this unit of Ironclad. And then I'm going to hide Infernock behind the hill, so we'll get cover if the Organ Gun shoots him again. And everyone else is going to shoot at the Brock Lord. And that's going to be pretty much that. I can also fire the mortar potentially at the Brock Lord if it hits. Turn 6 for the Abyssal Dwarfs. And Infernock just gets over the hill, so there'd be cover from the Organ Gun if there's a turn 7, and he gets healed up because I do 2 fireball damage to the Brock Lord, and the Dragonfire team puts a bit on him as well. And there's the damage confirmation there. And look at this, Basusu. So she charges into the rear of that Ironclad regiment. They're already damaged. 8 attacks. Guess how much damage Basusan dishes out? 1. She only manages 1 damage, which is pretty criminal. Hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s with Vicious. 1 damage. Quite ridiculous. However, that meant that I needed a roll of an 8 to finish off the unit. And thankfully, I was able to do it. So terrible damage roll, but the nerve roll makes up for it. So they are dead. They dropped both their tokens, so the Abyssal Dwarves are now in the lead because the Vanilla Dwarves only have a 2-point objective, while Infernock is carrying a 2-point and a 1-point objective at the same time. So that is the end of turn 6. So before I tell you whether the game ends there, let's see whether my strategy overall for the game is looking successful. Well, it's been a bit dicey. This flank wasn't handled the best by me, I think. Obviously, I got Bracky needlessly killed when totally unnecessary. And I think this side was handled a lot better. I think my plan over here to crush this flank and work my way in towards the middle and pick up all the objectives with these really tough units that aren't going to get killed easily paid off. The golems may be on over there. Maybe they were slightly unlucky to take so much damage from the Brocks in the second round of fighting. The Organ Gun possibly would have killed them regardless. Infernock is holding all the chips, as it were, though. So, if there is no turn 7, the Abyssal Dwarves are going to win. If there is a turn 7, the Dwarves will have to either shoot Infernock or charge him with the Brock Lord and hope to get very lucky and kill him, and then maybe just kill a mortar. See there's Infernock with the tokens, there's the Brocks with the token, and I can confirm that that is the end of the game. There is no turn 7, so the Abyssal Dwarves reign supreme. It was incredibly close and incredibly dicey, and my plan, because this flank maybe didn't do as well as I'd hoped and allowed the Brock Lord to come in and turn the tide of this combat between the Ironclad and the Immortal Guard, That really could have cost me, which stemmed from the double one from the gargoyles on the Brock Riders. That could have cost me big time, but thankfully Susan was able to save the day and Infernock was able to just survive, and he wasn't targeted that much. He had a few rounds of shooting at him, but it was mainly with cover. I think he was shot at a fair bit. Some of it may have been with cover. Because he's height 4, he can be shot over hills. So it's tempting to do so, but there is going to be cover from that. But he managed to stay fairly safe, and he was never on really high damage for the whole game. I kept healing him back up with Dravok's Fireball. So he was kind of the MVP. But Susan did a good job killing off Organ Guns, then finished off Golluck's Fury, then helped kill off the Horde with Infernock, and then killed the Ironclad Regiment, finished them off. So she's a potential for MVP of the game as well. The Mortar landed a couple of decent hits. So in a 6-turn game, that's pretty much average. You'd expect to hit a couple of times. And the half-breeds were kind of let down by Brecky, allowing them to be charged like that. And I think if Brecky hadn't gone in, they would have still been killed, but then he would have been able to finish off a unit. So don't put your individuals in harm's way when it could lead to multiple overruns, folks. That's something to definitely learn from this game. The Dwarfs did it over there when they allowed the Brock Lord to be overrun by the Obsidian Golems after Infernock had gone in for the double charge on him. And I did it over here with Brecky, allowing the Brock Riders to double overrun him. So something definitely to take from this game is be careful with your individuals. Okay, that is the end of that. And I think we can get rid of Mr. Arrow now, who we will thank for the fine service provided during this video. And I think I will disappear as well. And you can just look at this beautifully Photoshop crafted thumbnail. It's almost time to end this. So, Clash of Kings on the horizon. How do I like this list? Well, I don't have much of a choice because I don't have too many other models. I can mix up the artifacts again. But the Phalanx on the Golems, it seems to be a fairly decent option. There will be games where it's totally pointless because there are going to be some armies that bring no Thunderous Charge whatsoever. And it'll be a waste. I considered putting Stealthy on one of the units as well, but with shooting, it's possibly more difficult to kind of direct your opponent towards a particular unit without just putting one behind the other, which really limits Golems because they're so slow in the first place. I'd rather not be putting them behind each other. So Stealthy may not be the best option for a single unit. There's always the option of going back to what I was doing before, which was just taking multiple cheaper items to just give it lots of units a little boost. But it's something I've got a few days to tinker with anyway before the event. We'll see what I ultimately settle on. And wish me luck. I'm currently painting an actual mortar to put into my army instead of the stand-in. And I'm also painting some severed Abyssal Dwarf heads to act as prizes, trophies for anyone that's able to defeat me at Clash of Kings this year. And I'm not expecting to win the tournament, of course, with quite a new army for me. I've only had a few games with them. And I'll just be happy if I can win more than I lose, then I'll be very satisfied considering it's a new army. And that remains to be seen, though. Anyway, don't forget to check out all the links in the description. Don't forget to leave a comment on the video. Very, very important, of course. Got any thoughts on my army, on my opponent's army, on the game in general? If you've spotted any grievous rules, blunders, feel free to drop those in. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, join my Facebook group, and so on. And naturally, if you have lots of money and want to see more content on this channel, then just throw lots of your money at me via Patreon. And I think that is everything. So all that remains to be said now is good night out there, whatever you